Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings Podcast. When people start tracing their family history, they often hear the same phrase, well, the trail ends at the ocean. Once you hit the immigrant ancestor, you can't go any further. It sounds final, doesn't it? Like there's an invisible wall sitting right in the middle of the Atlantic or the Pacific, cutting off every path back to the old country. For generations, many genealogists accepted that belief. They stopped with the ancestor who arrived on the ship, the one who stepped onto the dock and became the beginning of the family story in America, Canada, or Australia. Everything before that moment was thought to be out of reach. But here's the truth. Genealogy does not end at the ocean. The ocean is not a wall, it's a bridge. And with the tools we have today, we can cross it. So why has this myth stuck around for so long? Part of it comes from real obstacles. For much of the 19th and early 20th centuries, records overseas were simply hard to get. Travel was expensive, archives weren't easy to access, most records weren't indexed, and very few were available outside the country they were created in. For a long time, researchers really did feel stuck at the shoreline. Language was another barrier. If your ancestors came from Hungary, Sweden, or Poland, you may not have spoken those languages or been able to read the old handwriting. To many people, the foreign records looked impossible to navigate. And then there's the psychological barrier. Once an ancestor crossed the ocean, they became the beginning of the story in their new homeland. Their life before immigration often faded into family lore. Vague, half-remembered, or completely forgotten, it was easy to believe that nothing more could be found. But that idea is out of date. Today, archives all over the world are digitizing records at a breathtaking pace. Parish registers, civil registrations, census schedules, notarial files, emigration permits. Millions of documents are available online right now. Germany, Ireland, Italy, Poland, Scandinavia, Latin America. The list goes on. Even in regions where digitization is still developing, researchers can order copies, hire local experts, or work with communities online. The myth that nothing exists overseas simply isn't true anymore. Of course, crossing the ocean in your research takes more than logging into a database. You need strategies. The first is identifying the exact place of origin. Saying Germany or Poland is too broad. You need the village, the parish, the town. Immigration records, naturalization papers, and census forms often hide the key. Sometimes it's even in a sponsor's name on a baptism certificate, or a neighbor listed on a census who came from the same place. The second strategy is handling the language. Old German script, Latin, records from Poland, Swedish church entries. They all take practice, but you don't have to be fluent. Word lists, translation guides, and online communities are there to help. Today you can post a snippet of handwriting in a genealogy group and have someone translate it for you within hours. The third strategy is patience with history. Borders change, towns change names. A family might appear Austrian in one record, Polish in another, Ukrainian in another, and yet never leave the village. Learning the history of your ancestors' region helps you follow them through those changes. Let me give you a few real-world examples. A family in Ohio thought their research ended with their Italian great-grandfather who immigrated around 1900. But his naturalization paper listed a small village in Calabria. With that clue, they found Italian civil records online and traced the line back to the early 1800s. Another researcher in Minnesota had a Swedish immigrant ancestor. The U.S. records only said Sweden. That's like saying born in the United States without the state or county. But by digging through naturalization papers and passenger lists, they discovered the exact parish. And once they had the parish, the Swedish church books online opened the family line back to the 1600s. A third case involved an Irish ancestor in New York. The family believed the trail stopped there. But by looking at baptismal sponsors and marriage witnesses, people who often came from the same village, the researcher identified a county in Ireland. From there, parish registers opened generations of Irish ancestors that had once seemed impossible to reach. Even DNA can help in this kind of research. Matches often cluster around regions. If your cousins trace back to the same part of Poland or Ireland, that's a hint. DNA won't give you the exact parish, but it can narrow the search when records are scarce. Breaking this myth is not just about documents. It's also about breaking the mental barrier. The idea that your family story starts at Ellis Island, Halifax, or Sydney Harbor is just not true. Your immigrant ancestor had parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Their stories shaped who they were when they arrived, and those stories are waiting for you on the other side of the ocean. So does genealogy end at the ocean? No, that's the myth. The real story is that the ocean is not an ending. It's a beginning. It's not a barrier. It's a bridge. With digitized records, DNA tools, translation resources, and an international community of researchers, you can cross that bridge and find your ancestors on the other shore. Will it take effort? Yes. Will it sometimes test your patience? Absolutely. But the reward is worth it, because every step you take overseas doesn't just add names and dates. It reconnects you with the deeper roots of your family. Now, as we close this episode, let's take a step back. This isn't just the end of one myth. This is the end of our whole Genealogy MythBusters series. Over the course of these episodes, we've challenged some of the biggest assumptions in family history, from online trees and census records to DNA testing and ethnic purity. Each myth carried a little bit of truth, but not the whole truth. And each time, we discovered something better. That the reality of genealogy is richer, messier, and far more rewarding than the myth. If there's one thing to carry with you from this series, it's this. Genealogy isn't about shortcuts. It's not about copying someone else's work, or clinging to tidy family stories, or assuming a single test will tell you everything. It's about curiosity. It's about persistence. It's about questioning what you've been told and digging until you find evidence you can trust. Every myth we've busted proves the same lesson. The truth is more interesting than the legend, and that should encourage you, not discourage you, because it means your family story is bigger, richer, and more human than you ever imagined. So don't stop at the myths. Don't stop at the ocean. Don't stop at the brick walls. Keep searching. Keep asking. Keep following the trail wherever it leads, because the journey never really ends. This may be the last episode of Genealogy MythBusters, but it's not the last chapter in your story. Your ancestors are out there, waiting on the other side of the records, the other side of the myths, the other side of the ocean, and they're worth finding. If you've got a hard-to-find ancestor you're stuck on, I'd love to hear about it. Just head over to ancestralfindings.com and click on Contact to send me a message. While you're there, take advantage of our free weekly genealogy lookups. Explore thousands of articles and enjoy hundreds of podcast episodes. We've been helping family history researchers since 1995. And if you're looking for even more, check out our Genealogy Gold Q&A series over on Patreon. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy searching.